So we bottomed yesterday morning after the big sell-off on Tuesday. An interesting thing was I shorted the first couple of times up here at 263, then changed my bias to long from here to the rest of the day. But there was nothing.
But are you talking about the exchange rate volatility?
If you look at it, I mean, there were no great signs that we were going to go higher other than, we were oversold. We just came off so much the day before. We did take out the prior day's low and then get back above it. I figured it was worth shorting into this the first time. It actually failed there about 4 or 5 times before finally at the end of the day we got through. But it wasn't very clear cut. Like we came down into this here, and I just bought here because that's where we had broken out from at 1020. But was prepared to sell into this again. But then buyers stepped up here, and then they stepped up again. Finally took us to 264. End of the day, that was strange because buying into this pullback into 263, we overshot by about 35 cents. But then the market anticipated the good Facebook numbers and whipped higher. And you can see we're at 265 now. 265 is going to be how to measure the strength in the market today. So this is kind of the potential failure area this morning. This was a huge move, 68 to 61 and a half. $6.50, 3.5. We've already retraced more than 50% of it. So right on the open pop here, a failure, and then let's say below 264.80. Look for a pullback into here. We spend the morning in the 265 area, and then we break to the upside. Certainly, you can look at playing that on the long side. It's doubtful, though, you'll get this sort of speed the way we got on the way down. So let's take a quick look at IWM. We have the same spot as yesterday we talked about, 165. 164.75. This is kind of the resistance zone. So that's that. It wasn't as weak the day before, and I guess you could argue it's not as strong today because it's been about the large caps being bounced around up and down. All right, so let's take a look at Facebook. So Facebook numbers ridiculously good. Google and Facebook have an oligopoly in the advertising market. They basically control the advertising market. So Facebook's interesting. We had the double bottom at 150. We had the positive catalyst here, Zuckerberg saying their business hadn't been impacted by any of the recent negative news. Had a great upside break. I figured there was a series of news stories a couple of days ago that caused it to break to the downside. I tried it on the long here. I think I tried it again on the long around here. And it kept on going. There was a great opportunity yesterday morning when a lot was going on to buy it into, this rate here. But I was not watching it at the time. So we're faced with it, most likely not revisiting these prices here for a while. If we go back to when the down move started, it had spiked as high as around 173 and change. Basically, I had anything in here as a possible failure, and then a rollover maybe to 170. and 168 and change. So, I mean, this is very different. To me, this is different in Twitter in terms of Twitter had a huge run up over the last year from the low from 20 or the teens to like in the 30s. And so when Twitter reported the really good numbers yesterday and it had recently sold off from 35 to 28, people used that opportunity on the gap up to sell. Facebook's a different story in the sense that it sold off recently as opposed to, it's not like we came into earnings and it was still hanging out up here in the 180s, pretty near the highs, and it's gapping up because they beat numbers again and they crushed it. That you had one of these situations here where people would be motivated to crush it. So I'm not saying it can't. Look, I'm going to try to short it, and it could pull back $2, $3, $4, but it's not one of these situations where it should melt. You might have a Boeing situation. Remember Boeing yesterday got hammered a bit on the open and then closed out around the high. So anyway, these are my spots. I'm going to look for a failure in this area here. Already shorted a few shares. Holding below, let's say 170, 180. You play it for the down move. It's hard to predict how deep it's going to go. But first spot you would look to cover a little bit would be into 171. Cover your risk and then kind of see. And if you could get a move back down into here to 69, this should be a tradable bounce from here. I think yesterday Twitter overshot. I thought 29 was a great spot in Twitter. It overshot by $1 before bouncing. So this gives us a wide range to work with. Obviously, it's possible it could hold, consolidate in this area here, not have much of a pullback, and break higher and go to the mid 170s. But I'm not putting that at the top of my list. But certainly, I'll keep that's in the back of my mind, not to get crushed if that does play out. Next one is Xilinx XLNX. We don't trade this often. This is one I used to trade back in the day quite often in the semiconductor space. But it's up a few bucks. Semiconductors have been hammered recently. It's in a downtrend. You have this area right here. What did I put on the sheet? 68 and 70. Yeah. And what you have is a situation here where you come in, it fails at 68. The last down move was from 68 to 63.60 before the final crush yesterday morning. So there could be some people that are motivated to sell it. I mean, it's in a downtrend. They've beaten guided higher. So in theory, if it does hold up in this area here, is strong on the open and then starts moving higher, you can play it for a move back up to 69.5. 69.5, 70. I have 70 on there as resistance. I'm just going off the last few days. So it's people already did sell it here on the initial reaction. It might be a bit of a tough nut to crack. That's my first thing is look to see if it fails here. Play it for move back down to 66. Shouldn't go all the way back down here, but they did beat and raise. So 66 to 70 is kind of the range I'm going to start to work with. Let's go to PayPal. So PayPal and eBay reported at the same time. So they spun off PayPal from eBay. So it already failed up here where it kind of broke down from a couple of days ago. Do I have that on the sheet? Yes, I do. 78 to 78.30. It's right here. 80. It's this. I should probably just do this every time. The levels 74, 76. So those are our levels from the game plan sheet. Now these guys, they beat. So I put on the notes, they beat by 5%, but they only raised guidance by 2%. I get suspicious when I see something like that. That could be they're just trying to be conservative. But if you're beating by more than you raised, to me, I like to short that opportunity. Now it's already failed here at 78. We can't get that ideal entry. I'll watch for weakness on the open if I can't get the pop into here. I will look for first move to be down at something like this, and then the shorter retracement like that. And then eBay. So eBay is the opposite, PayPal. The numbers looked okay. It's already up 9% for the year, outperforming the market by a lot and not really guiding higher or showing anything special is not a good recipe for the stock. So let's just go back further and see what this thing is doing. So you can see it's in this uptrend. I'm not even sure why. I guess it's broken the uptrend channel now. So my instinct is always to short this thing, and then it doesn't work out a lot of times. But what did I put on the sheet here? 39.50, 39.80. So other people are already thinking short at 39.50. Obviously, it's sold here in the pre-market a couple times. It came off $1 from there, so I will short it here again. But this is, the C for short is definitely into $40. So coming into earnings, it was bought. Numbers, well, I guess over here, I'm not sure what this gap up was about. And then if it fails here and on the open, and if it's consolidating below 39 later in the day, you want to play it on the short side. And I mean, if it ends up being really weak today, like this area here from December of last year is mid 37s. Okay, so Twitter was pretty close to idealized in terms of the price action for us to be able to make money in it yesterday based on the levels we were looking at in the initial plan to short it at 32. As I said, it did overshoot to the downside, which made it a little bit tricky. But I thought as it got closer to 28, I got aggressive. I even thought, as it got into 29.5, I thought maybe, but it was just the speed was so much. But the second leg took it down to 28.20, played it for the bounce up to 29, looking to get flat into like 29.5 and short it. That short worked, it came back down, shorted it again when it came back to 29.5, just because of how hard this down move was. And got stopped out here on my short. It did come in and retest a little bit below 29 again. So it seems to be finding its footing right below 29. And this morning it's up with Facebook. So, I mean, I'm very happy to short it. If it spikes right on the open close to 31, I'd be very happy to short it here for a play back down to 29.50. As I mentioned yesterday, it could just be setting up a longer term consolidation. The next one is TER. Put this one right on the open at 35. You can see it pop back up above 36, covered the risk there. Eventually into the close, stopped out below the morning low. So definitely coming into today, based on price action, it does seem to be acting like a weak stock. And maybe part of that was people saw this down here at 32 in the after hours, and once it got below 36, they just kept on selling. It did catch an upgrade this morning. So the way to look at it is if it's below 35, sellers are in control. Above 35 and holding, you could look for it to pop back up to 35.70 to 36. I do think longer term that it is going to probably work its way back up to this area here. So that's something to keep in mind. But certainly no problems if it's below $35 and you want to be shorted. It's fine. And then Boeing. So Boeing is a change in terms of a lot of these large cap stocks have been beating and raising guides and looking really good, and the initial gaps have been sold and then they've been weak. This one actually changed that pattern a little bit, right? So this one sold off on the open down to 32. It bounced back up to 340. This is probably what killed people right here. It dropped again. This level, I guess I highlighted from the pre-market support. So it came all the way back down to pre-market support and held here. It had a great bounce and closed at the high. So it brings back the high from a couple of days ago into play. For myself, I think, starting to accumulate a position between 338 and 340 against like 335, based on the way it's acting, is not the worst idea. I mean, buyers really did take control, but I want to see it continue to close. I want to see the closes be above 338. If it starts having closes below 338, that would start to concern me. That's it. So there's a lot going on. Just because I didn't talk about Visa doesn't mean you can't trade it. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult than the stocks I talked about. But VTech made a good point, which is the long-term resistance here is 25. You can see it's above that right now. But you should have an alert there. If it does, you could use that as inflection today. Holding above, obviously, it's be tricky short it, but if it fails here at 26 and gets below 25, could come all the way right back down at 23 and a half, 24.
Hope you enjoyed that video. You can actually watch that video if you're subscribed to our Trader 90 before the market even opens. What stocks are in play? What levels in those stocks are important? And how we might go about attacking that stock. That's Steve Spencer, 20-year veteran trader, laying it out there every morning before the market even opens. A really, really powerful tool to start your session off on the right foot. So right now we're offering a trial that you can take advantage of to access this meeting and other meetings throughout the day. We have a meeting at 11 a.m. Eastern where you can sit down with Mike Bellafiore and listen to him talk about what's going on during the morning session, what stocks were in play, what the best trade opportunities were, as well as maybe some things that we're looking at heading into the afternoon session. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that trial.